says he's a woman. Hello, this is Benjamin Boyce, and I'm out of phase, out of time, out of sync with reality right now. Let's get a little bit more light in here, but I don't want to go full studio lighting because it just really irritates my eyes. I want to chill out. Maybe I could change the way in which things are lit. I guess I look fine. Hi. How are you doing? This is Benjamin Boyce, and I don't have anything to talk about. I just felt like, checking in. How you guys doing? Your quarantine stream. I'm going to do a core stream. Quarantine dreams. How have your quarantine dreams been going, people? I see you too, somewhat. Mean John. And I really have nothing planned here. I was hoping that somebody wanted to say something in a chat, and then we can just give me a reason to try to make sense to you into my microphone and into your stereo speakers or however you're listening to this. And I could probably turn myself up a little bit more. We'll see how animated I get and how loud I get. My backdrop is two primordial characters from the posthumous The Blackbird Variations. Probably finish. I've written that book 5 or 6 times now. I'm on the 6th time, and I think the 6th time is going to be it. I think that's the charm. Anyway, so that's there's these twins, and they always have different names. There's the longest. They don't really stay in the scene too much because they're like a fundamental part of the reality. It's like dualism. It's like you can never really escape it. You're like, oh, let's be non-dualist, as like opposed to what? Well, a dualist, and then you're screwed over and over and over again, just like the binary thing. You can't be non-binary. Just create another vector of binaryhood. Anyway, so those guys just kind of, they appear and they disappear. And probably the most epic story about them is when one of the, I'm talking about the characters in the background here. The longest poem about them is Accident and Intention. And they both see the end of the world and they try to stop it from happening. Well, Accident tries to stop the world from ending, and Intention tries to get ahead of the world ending in order to, survive the ending of the world, as if you could do that. But, Intention's got to do what Intention's got to do, and Accident doesn't really give a fuck. Well, he can't, because he's Accident. He can't ever intend anything. He can only ever fall into grace, not fall down from it. He can only go in one direction. So they both split off and they go on these wild adventures, and Accident maps out every level of intention. It's in my big old work. It's about how I'm trying to describe the process of the creation of true volition, which is higher than even free will is. But you have to go through all these different levels and stages of growth. Like you have to earn free will. It's not free if you don't earn it, right? So you have to go through and go through these different processes in order to arrange more and more complex forms of intentionality, or whatever you want to call it, into something else, right? You intend something to happen, or you intend a life, or you intend self, or you just intend to get some food, or you intend to build a table, right? Like all these different levels of intention lead into higher and higher and grander and grandiose manifestations of the will. Anyway, so Accident goes, well, where is he? Accident, let's just say this guy's Accident, and he goes on this big adventure and he maps out these huge mountains, and Intention's over here, and Intention falls in love with this lady called Minosine, and they have a bunch of babies. And the byproducts of Intention and Minosine, or memory, are all the different words and all the different like little packets of intention. And they build this big fortress that's supposed to outlast the destruction of the world. But by the end of the poem, you discover that Intention's actually, his ultimate intention is to destroy the world. So he can break the whole world down into language and then create something completely new and otherworldly out of it. And then Accident and him have to stop each other somehow, but Accident can't do it on purpose. He just can't do it on purpose to defeat Intention's purpose. So, and of course, because it's a posthumous work, it's not finished yet. It's just like, it ends at that conclusion. Everything always ends at the climax for some reason. It's a postmodern condition of mine. The climax is the end. There's no like refractionary period where anything actually like concludes from it. It just like falls off into another thing. The climax leads into a completely other different story, another baby or something like that. Anyway, so Hope you guys are doing good. That was my opening salvo. We're only 5 minutes in. I'm rambling a lot right now. I probably should slow down and breathe. I wanted to shoot out some subtle, relaxing energy for anybody who's looking at the walls a little too much and like seeing that they're seeing the same walls constantly all throughout their days, and maybe getting outside every once in a while for a walk. So I just wanted to provide some content for you guys because I've been listening to a lot of people. I've been doing a lot of interviews and like just absorbing people into me and just like absorbing people into me. So I wanted to like return the favor because some people don't follow this channel for anything other than to listen to my voice produce things. Not to say that that's most of you. There's got to be like 2 or 3 people out there who are specifically signed up to this place just to listen to my voice for whatever reason. So I just wanted to like service that rare little internet dweller, with a little bit of vacation time away from their internal thoughts into my internal thoughts. But anyways, so Climax Baby, good band name. If you guys have anything that you want me to dance with my words around about, I can do that, or we can just find something conclusive to talk about. You know what we've been doing at my house every evening at a certain time, we write down what we did today. Now, I am under furlough. My day job, such as it is on pause until April 24th, at least, right? So it's just me and the internet. Like, it's just me and producing this kind of content. So my life isn't necessarily that much changed, but I am missing that central part of my day where I get out and I interact with a gaggle of individuals of varying age ranges, and it kind of gets me out of myself. It gives me time to think, to chew, to like fixate on something other than what my brain is just fixating on. So my life hasn't really changed, but my roommate, partner, lady, friend, special, very special lady friend, she's in a completely different state now. Like she is really plugged into the world, and now she's got to just be here at her home. So she's doing her thing, I'm doing my thing. So every evening during quarantine, so quarantining, we write down what we did that day, and just starting that process has like given us something to look forward to doing, or like like this little incentive to produce something quantifiable today. I've been doing a lot of interviews and working a little bit on a couple of evergreen episodes. I have actually, I can share this. If anybody remembers the Evergreen State College fiasco of 2017, which is why I exist in this virtual form now, basically. What they do every year at Evergreen State College is that the president puts on a State of the College address. And since the fiasco of 2017, I have been publishing my version, the distilled version of the State of the College address, and kind of pointing out a whole lot of bullshit that is being spewed, or, kind of mocking them for, very basic critical things that I have to say about, this particular administration. Anyways, sometime in March, I think it was mid-March, or early March, they had the 2020 State of the College address, and this one was streamed live via Zoom. Zoom is a web program sort of like Skype with a little bit extra functionality, perhaps more business-oriented or large group meeting-oriented. So the Evergreen State College, or at least the department who's in charge of this part of the college, pumped out a stream of the 2020 State of the College address into the ether, and you had to kind of know people to know people to know people in order to get the link. I got the link because I know people who know people who know people. Actually, I know people who know, which is the best thing to know, or the best who's to know, depending on what they do know. Anyways, so they gave me the know-how to plug that link in. I had to go to work, but I got to record it, right? I got this thing recorded. Turns out that they didn't record it themselves. It turns out that this state agency suppressed another video document. Like, this is the third one. I think definitely the second, but probably the third thing that I found them suppressing, or making private, or like, making sure that it's really difficult to get, which is great. It's great. I have access right now, me and this other person I'm very grateful for having helped me in this process, have the copy of the State of the College address. So I'm going through and I'm ingesting and digesting and kind of distilling the State of the College address for my next episode. I did some heavy work on it yesterday, and then today I had another interview. Tomorrow I have another interview, and then on Friday, the interviews kind of take a lot out of me. Actually, I came out of a 2-hour interview today, and I was just about to go like lay down, but then I popped in the shower, felt refreshed. I'm like, you know what? I want to try that talking to the microphone thing, just to get things out of me, because I've been taking so much in. But this one was really, really intense. I'm going to have to review it and see how to put it into a form that's proper, ethical, and delicious and delectable for those who are into the topics that are spoken about. So, yep, that's my day. Oh, Maggie Ellis, always with the prescient questions, very fundamental questions here that Maggie likes to propose to us, to me, and to all of my listeners. Maggie Ellis says, remind me, please, is Evergreen a private college? Oh, they like to act like a private college, but no, actually, they are thoroughly relying on the state. I mean, they're a state college to begin with, but now they spend a significant portion of their attention, at least within certain departments of the administration, are focused on persuading the Washington state legislature to fund them just a little bit more, 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 because they cannot rely on students to float the boat. The boat is sinking. So the politicians and ergo the state and the taxpayer are floating this particular boat, or keeping it from sinking for just a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer, so they can figure out how to make up for their loss in enrollment. Yeah. So no, it's not private whatsoever. It's very public, and they are bound by certain public laws. One of them being Freedom of Information Act, which Washington apparently has a pretty strong one, but it's pretty easy to get around. I mean, you're required they are required by the law to share all their documents. It doesn't mean they have to keep the documents. It doesn't mean they have to make the documents, and it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to get you the documents within a very prompt amount of time, especially if they only assign one person to a department that is already flooded with work to do, especially work that was started before the previous public records department head unfortunately passed away at the ending of 2017. So they should be giving me things, and they are. Public records lady is a wonderful person. She's really doing a really good job, but she's put in a position where she can only do so much work humanly possible. And the college, as a state agency, is under no specific guidance to totally staff up their, that particular department. And again, they can just like not record things, or stream them out and not record them, or just make it really difficult for people to replicate the information that they are producing. So that's what I get to do. Mr. Little Edward Snowden of a small liberal arts college of an innovative frequency out in the Pacific Northwest woods, 100-acre woods, which is actually, I think, approximately how many woods the Evergreen State College campus is made of, 100 acres of them. Oh, Rye has a question, or at least he has a statement that says, oh, no, it's not. I thought you said something. I'm curious. But Rye P is saying, I'm currently time traveling toward you at the speed of 2 seconds per second. And I must say to you, past Saf, that I specifically subscribed for the cat footage at the end of YouTube videos. So, subscribing for the cat footage is the Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself of the Benjamin Boyce YouTube channel. That's basically what you say. It's like the only reason you're here is not because I'm a egotistically inflated centrist or off-brand wannabe Dave Rubin. No, it's for the cat footage. Right? You're not here to be corrupted in your perfection of progressive ideology and be turned into some form of totally messed that up. Some form of alt-right lame-o. It's for the cat footage. You're not here to learn about the ins and outs of the LGBTQ community, or at least certain small, tiny little sectors of it that I somehow stumbled into reporting on or interviewing about. You're here for the cat footage. Myself, I'm not here to just shove my face into a bunch of spirally lights and a webcam of certain pixelated variety and this dead cat that people keep on mistaking for some sort of like voodoo doll that I'm spitting on for some strange, like peculiar, magical reason. No, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the cat footage. I am here. We're all here. This is cat footage channel. But because I don't have a significant portion about it, and because like I have like this problem with language that I just need to use it and make mistakes on it, like the cat footage is hidden behind like mountains and mountains of like extraneous content, basically. You know, a salacious headline, a crisp cover footage, like you're tricked into, oh, this guy's informative. This guy's like a homebrew Charlie Rose, like this guy is somebody who's doing some weird kind of experiment with documentary footage, and then you make it to the end. Somehow I get you to the end of the video. You see the cat footage. You're like, oh, that's why I'm here. This is what it is. I should have my cat, my single cat, we're looking for another one, somehow do a little bit of that channel promotion, like subscribe, or something like that. But I'm really bad at the promotion. But if I could trick Bijou into promoting the subscription, then I'd probably be a much grander YouTube presence than I am currently. Yeah, you don't have to be grand to be less than grand. Anyways, Thomas Korn says, and we can remove totally all that crap they inserted after they are out, long as the stimulus bill gets passed. You guys are talking about actual issues. Crap. You guys are having issues. I have not totally read up on the stimulus bill. I do know that the federal government of the United States passed it last week or last night, or at least got it passed enough to be put in the news that it is passed. Maybe there's other things on there that are being discussed, but that will translate into money for people down the pipe, the people, the capital P people, power to the people, checks to the people, $1,200 plus $500 if you have a child to the people. And so that's going to help a lot of people. I would like to, this is not the right venue of that, but I would like to get like somehow understand how you guys are doing with the quarantine and with the lockdown insofar as you're locked down, with your how you're making ends meet, how you expect to make ends meet, how your view of the world is right now. For me, myself, it's still too early to tell. I'm aware of it, but I'm optimistic, and I'm just too stupid to be as dire as I should be about it. I don't know. I refuse to panic right now. I look at social media, and it's kind of difficult for me to tell where people are being way overboard or just partisan in their reportage, and when they're actually like tangling with absolute certainties, or very probable certainties as they arise. So I don't really know that much about that. So I'm just going to, there's a lot of different things in this world where I know that I could only show my ignorance by embarking on a, discussion of that. I can talk about my mood a little bit, but I'm more interested in your mood. I'm interested in how people are handling the situation, uh, away from work, if that's your situation, at home, if that's your situation, and toward this huge event that is unfolding at this moment. It's like it's this thing. It's very slowly advancing. I mean, rapidly here. It's slowly advancing at a very rapid pace. Let's just say, you know. But when you're in quarantine, time is different than when you're not. I mean, like, how long has it been? How long will it be? I don't know. Anyways, I don't necessarily want to focus on that. I wanted to give people a break from that. So, stimulus. I'm your stimulus, baby. I'm just talking just orally, just with the parts of your brain that are being stimulated by me. That's all I meant by that. I didn't mean that I was going to give you any money or anything else other than just this very strict audio visual stimulation insofar as you're looking at me, not turned away or being or I am being drowned out by some sort of rumbly truck outside or a baby in the bathwater that you're trying to sieve through the screen. So you keep the thing that you want, get rid of the thing that you don't want. Maybe the baby's screaming. Maybe the baby is screaming. Rye P says, the world is going nuts buying all the toilet paper, and I'm at home learning new ways to turn rice, beans, flour, and eggs into delicious things. And then there's an emoji that looks like a pepper salt shaker or perhaps like some sort of lunchbox from Japan, but I can't tell. And I'd have to really mash my face into the screen. And I should lower my voice when I do that, so we can stay at a nice, chill, perhaps a little bit more than you expected ASMR form of stimulus. You know what? I don't even know if anybody can hear me. No, I think I can. I have feedback. You guys can hear me. We're 20 minutes in to wherever we're going. Tracy K had an experience. Tracy K says, I was scared of touching anything. About a month ago. No, probably, I don't know exactly when, but probably about 6 or 7, 8 weeks ago. Every time I went into work, I just became really hyper aware, like touching things. Like we're all touching things. We're all touching. I'm touching things. I'm touching things. And like, I just like now whenever I go out of my zone, which is it's a zone, like, but we kind of live a little bit away. We don't live in a city, but every time I go in to the city or even the corner market, like everything is different. Like my relationship to the world has changed. Like the world is got cooties, right? Like my brain, like it's kind of cool in a way. My brain has turned the whole world into cooties. I made this song. How does it go? I don't know how it goes. Um, every time I, every time I, how's it go? Every time I touch it, every time I cough, I seek medical advice, living in the hypochondriac's paradise. And every time I touch a surface, I sanitize my hands twice, living in a hypochondriac's paradise. Oh. Right? That's one of the songs that I came up with. Another of the songs is kind of rude, but it goes, when a man says he's a woman. I'm not going to sing that right now, though, because I actually respect a lot of trans individuals, but I also make fun of the gender identity freaks. And so I made a song about the gender identity freaks called when a man says he's a woman. And then there's a few verses and it goes, it's ma'am, says the man that says he's a woman. And I'm not going to sing the rest of the verse. The verses are a little bit intense. That one, I go a little bit overboard about the certain forms of very manly men saying they're women and then being very manly about preferring that people treat them that way. So that's my other song. Do you guys have any songs that you've been singing? Oh, wait, hold on. Rye P says that song has been canceled. Hypochondriac's Paradise? Oh, this one. Yeah. If only our politicians would have held to this standard of what Mark Bousquet says. Every time I think of you, I touch myself. I can't remember the term. I don't want. Yeah. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself. I already used the sanitized line, so we could work with that. Well, I'd have to do it off camera because you just have to kind of play around with the different words. We could do like, I want to do something like, I don't want any other viral load. When I lick a toilet, I post it to my social media. So you're like, okay, let's do something about the toilet lickers posting to social media and like, I don't want, I don't know, the influencer thing. The weird thing is though, I had this joke last year about an influencer like competing with the Spanish flu for like viral load, but now it came true. So we have all these influencers that are competing with the pandemic to like, boost their signal in the memosphere. But we all want to turn into memes, right? Like I want to be like, we all think that we could be like Neo, right? Like this is the lie. This is the lie. I'm going to get like really crazy right now. because I have an idea. This is science fiction. This is just science fiction. So everybody, like, let's just imagine a world where everybody's like plugged in these devices and are like competing for attention. And they think that they could become something that's immortal. Like all these people are trying to achieve immortality, celebrity status, right? Immortality. But nobody realizes that the only thing that actually becomes immortal is the meme. So what one lonely guy does, actually he's not lonely, he's just a little bit off. He decides to turn himself into a meme, into a mega meme, but he wants to maintain his own power of choosing. He wants to maintain consciousness. He wants to maintain the ability to adapt. He wants to attain the feeling, the delicious feeling of power, right? He wants to upload the entire apparatus of what it is to be a human into immortality by translating him entirely into memes. And so what he does is he starts creating all these books of memes, like aphorisms and like little Twitter sentences and stories, and he starts to encode himself into language in such a way that the algorithms that interact with him start to get like really twitchy and start to want to weave him all together. Like he seduces algorithms into supporting his consciousness as he sails. He uploads himself into the realm of lights and sounds, right? And that's what how he accomplishes that. He transfers himself into immortality, and on the other side of that veil, right, on the other side of the screen, it turns out that there's this world that's formed entirely out of attention. It's completely created, this world, this space where memes reside. It's created entirely out of attention. And right now, in the modern era or in the science fiction era that we're dreaming of together right now, that all of that stuff is vomited through computers, but computers are merely the vessel for this world to interact with human beings. And by interacting with human beings, the world becomes more real because you have more people pouring more and more attention into this other world, right? But before the internet, there were already the world, that world of like this astral plane, this world of attention, like this universe or this layer, this frequency created out of attention has been around since human beings started using language and human beings started like being aware of that world, of having that human attention. It's been there for ages and ages and ages. Just before the internet and before the printing press, before all these different technologies, it was just a slower place, right? But human beings were slower too back in prehistory. And since prehistory, there were already these entities that had uploaded themselves into that world by existing inside of the stories that people in this world told each other, right? So all of these gods had already been there for ages, like just preying upon and building themselves out of and maintaining their, various levels of awareness and hunger and power and pain and pleasure and all that stuff had been living inside of stories. So the guy who uploads himself into this world, right? The guy in the future that uploads himself into that world, he meets with those entities. He actually realizes that the world of dreams is much more vast than even he thought, and actually much more powerful. And he starts doing weird things on the other side of the screen until the other side of the screen jumps out into the brains of people, and we all go crazy for about 3 to 5 years because nobody can tell, because we all like have this massive psychosis. In the future, we all go crazy, and then this woman comes along and wakes us all back up so we can be kind of sane again. I just gave you guys the entire plot of my 20-year in the making 7-volume series of novels created out of every fiction known to man. How's that for an elevator pitch? Aren't we kind of stuck in an elevator right now? That'd be cool. That's what we should do. Every day, not only should you get a walk, but you should spend at least 3.5 minutes of dedicated elevator time. Once in the beginning of the day and once at the end of the day, right? It's kind of like this little meditation practice that puts you into another chamber. Like you kind of go, you're like, okay, I'm going to get something done. And you go in there and you pretend that you're in an elevator for like 2 minutes, right? And you just like completely, you're just traveling into this other state. You step out and you're in your office and you work. Maybe you go outside to get lunch and then you get back inside to do lunch. And you give yourself that little time, that little portal in the day that used to be taken up by space. But because space has collapsed and time hasn't, you have to bring space through your imagination into your present in order to give yourself space between one task or one way of being and another. Like little tiny passageways between the different chapters of your daily routine. How's that for an idea? You can use that if anybody wants. I just made it up. I probably didn't make it up, though. There's no sense in claiming anything other than to say, you know, I take no responsibility whether or not like you experience actually drastic negative consequences from anything I recommend. I'm not responsible for you having a horrible day because you played Elevator at the beginning and the middle and the end of it. I take no responsibility for that. Nobody can make me feel guilty about that. I refuse that shame. That's on you. Okay? That's the deal. So if you use my idea, just don't blame me if it goes horribly wrong. Back to real questions. Lord Kronk looks like a little pasty purple popsicle treat cartoon guy asks, where are the cats? Are we talking about the movie? Did you guys hear about that? This is like old news. This is from like last week. I think at some point it came to light. You guys probably already know this, but it came to light that somebody had was given the job. So there was this movie called Cats that was based on a Broadway play or a musical, and they turned into a movie. It turned out to be a horrible movie. But while they were making this movie, they hired somebody, or they hired a team of people to paint anuses on all of the cats, like all the human beings that are playing the cats, right? So Idris Elba and Taylor Swift, they're in this movie. So somebody, and they're dressed as like these furry cat creatures, right? And then somebody, and this is what I heard, somebody was paid to go through and draw digestive endings to all their tracks, their digestive tracks, like the butthole. So somebody went through and drew all the buttholes and put the buttholes on, like through some sort of weird maneuver of CGI magic, like pasted all these buttholes on all these like A-list actors in a like negative C-list movie. And then, so somebody went through and did that, hours and hours, probably hundreds of hours doing that. Somebody did that, or several people did that. And then later on, they decided against that. So for some reason, this is what I don't understand. If somebody had to draw it all in, can't they just go back to the version where they weren't drawn in anymore? Maybe not. I guess they couldn't go back and just erase the buttholes. Somebody had to be hired to go through and manually remove every single one of those butts holes from every single one of those frames. See, that's the problem. That's the problem. You make an idea and you're like, oh, that was a bad idea. And then you have to like do all this work. So the work that you attach to an idea is a blessing and a curse, because the work itself is what makes an idea reality. And what you have to do if you're a willful creature, right? If you have will, insofar as you have a will that you can make a decision, it doesn't really become reality until you turn it into something real by means of work. And that's the problem that I'm having with like all my series, my books. Like once you get into the world of dreams, what is the feedback back mechanism for all the dreams that everybody's having to be coincident, to be real? Like if everybody's just in their own imaginations, it doesn't matter, right? There's no reality to that. Everybody's just doing whatever they want. But human beings thrive on attention. We're actually designed by this hard, difficult world filled with space and time and rocks to like actually have to deal with rocks and space and time, right? So in a dream world, how do you maintain some sort of order? How do you maintain a price and a value, ergo a reality, a meaning to all the different things that you could possibly imagine? That's the gambit of my entire series. Like if you could upload yourself into heaven, how would you make sure that heaven wasn't just everybody, just dreaming and making things up? Like how do you make that heaven real? Like what are the dynamics? What's the hydraulics of the imagination? What causes belief to be real? And that's why I ended up inventing this entire chronology of the invention of the dream world, like the invention of this astral plane where everybody can live or where the people who graduate into it, who upload themselves into the ether, right, or into the matrix or whatever, like the way that they got there is how they paid for the ability to live immortally. So what people did back in history, all the way back. So I had to go all the way back to the beginning. So and this book is actually on Amazon. So at the very beginning of time, the first man who does this actually has to go through and shut down every part of his body in order to upload himself into that dream world, right? But somebody late in history, and it's not this book, it's another book with a similar cover over there. The person at the end of history, the postmodern hero, the guy who just wants to escape from narrative, escape from time, live as some sort of like a meta entity on the back, like some sort of leech on history, the guy who wants to graduate out of story, out of plot. That guy can use technology to do it. He invents algorithms. He invents games to have people believe in him, have people pay attention to him as he slowly slips out of reality into this other reality, because he has to maintain his reality in that other reality, and he's dependent on other people to do that. The gods had different religions. What Stephen at the end of time has isn't a religion. He has a VR video game, right? That's how he affords his ascension into a semi-deityhood. His story is really weird because he's postmodern. He doesn't believe in being a deity, nor could he be a deity because he's so late in history. Things are too complex for him. He like a deity is an entity that's really rudimentary. And all of the like you have the deity of the wind and the deity of the earth and the deity of the ocean. You have all these deities that take up a substantial amount, like had already claimed a substantial amount of reality, and like tithes or like taxes, they got dividends from everybody who interacted with all these different levels of reality. Like all the people who were on roads would pray to the road god, and the road god would get a little bit of that attention in order to maintain his cult in the ether. But Stephen doesn't have any of that because people don't believe in that way anymore. How we believe in the present now is by, playing video games or like interacting through all these different mediums, radio and voices and AR and all that stuff, So if you think about it, and I'm sorry that this is a really weird stream, but we're just in rainbow magic storytelling land. If you think about all that stuff about how there's that technology, how's it called? It's like deep fakes, the deep fakes. So if you imagine that you could have Marilyn Monroe perpetuate as Marilyn Monroe through every given movie that you wanted, like somebody would own the rights to Marilyn Monroe, but you would have to put words into her mouth. You would have to write a script for Marilyn Monroe in the CGI deep fake sense of the Marilyn Monroe, in order for her to act and to be somebody who would gain people's attention, or like at least a figure that would gain people's attention and their love and their adoration, you would have to give her a script, because that's all we have a recording of, mostly of Marilyn Monroe, is her acting somebody else's words. So in order to upload your own meaning making mechanism into the deep fake world, right, in order to upload my personality, not just my visage and what anybody else would say, but like that mechanism that causes me to say what I say in the order that I say it, and evinces the character that is Benjamin on the other side of all the sounds and lights that I make. You would have to somehow get an algorithm to think like me. And you would have to get several algorithms to think like me in concert, because I'm not just one algorithm. I'm stacks and stacks of algorithms, like my hunger, my body, like all these different layers of me, all have to be replicated in order to get something even close to a synthesis of me. So deep faking personality that's the trick. It's not about artificial intelligence. It's about replicating consciousness. It's about convincing a computer to mimic what it is to be a human being, which isn't just intelligence. It's not just intelligence. It's all these other processes going on. And so in my book series, what the character has to do is go through and set up a system of responses to what he chooses to do, is to set up a series of responses to every given piece of literature throughout time. So he can teach a computer, or he could put his imprint of responding to literature into a computer, so that that computer could have a dialogue and then start to in relief, like a cameo. He's seen as a response to something in history, mainly story, and he chooses story because story is the art form that's created and evinces character. Like the story is where we contain consciousness, or like the artifact that would best contain that which would be consciousness. It would not be a system of intelligences. It wouldn't be just a bunch of yes and no answers or a bunch of very fancy math. It wouldn't be math. It would be story. That is what you would need to imprint into a machine in order to give it a artificial consciousness, would be the ability to interact with the world like we interact with the world in a three-dimensional, multi-consciousness way. How many people did I lose? Well, Tom Kern's still here. We got Jose Dirt. We got Big Pete Lowell, Scarlet Thumbs Up. Hope you guys are doing good. Oh, look at this. Ry P. I think he probably paid attention. Ry P says, on a scale of, say, 10,000 years, what are the roles of technology and story relative to the survival and perpetuation of the human species? In your expert opinion, should we carve cat memes into rock? Okay, on a scale of 10,000 years, what are the roles of technology and story relative to the survival and perpetuation of the human species? Well, are we talking about the human species? Because all the human species needs to perpetuate as the human species. Are we talking about human culture? I think what you would have to do if you really wanted to play like the really long game, like I would say I would look at my literary heroes, like how they perpetuated through time, how they became immortal. Like the literary heroes are peoples whose voices have traveled, right? And the imprint of their personality into those voices. It's always in relationship to something else. I'm sorry. So you have Homer, but Homer's kind of like a group consciousness. Homer, there's probably somebody like there was Homer, who composed the things, but because it was an oral tradition, like it was spoken and spoken and spoken, so it was churned through telling. What the Iliad and the Odyssey were churned through people regurgitating over and over and over them over and over and over again. So his voice is more like the voice of all these people's voices. His voice is more of a concert. You get up into the time of the printing press, even later than that. You get probably to Augustine, like where somebody writes a novel about their wrestling with God and time. Augustine from that one place. Like St. Augustine. I can't remember his dates, but he encoded his voice in literature and actually encoded a spiritual journey. Like he encoded his thoughts. He encoded a lot of that. And so we have a better sense of him as an individual because it perpetuated through time. But why would it perpetuate through time if it didn't provide something useful for somebody else, right? So insofar as Augustine became a saint, right? He ascended into immortality in a sense through serving something else that would enshrine him, basically other people. So this institution of the Catholic Church enshrined Augustine and perpetuated him through time. So it's not just technology, right? It is story, but it's institutions. It's how stories become instituted. It's how like somebody becomes so important to other people that people perpetuate his voice. Like I was thinking more recently would be like Nietzsche. Like the amount of writing that this man did, like this frail man with like digestive issues, like probably a very sensitive individual with this huge voice, right? Like you can feel his passion, you can feel his anger, you can feel him engaging with thoughts and ideas and other beings, other humans, other philosophers through history. You can feel that on the page. And because he's worth paying attention to, people keep on finding him and resurrecting him in their imagination. Every time you consume a piece of content, you're resurrecting the person who created that content in your imagination. You're doing it. You're doing it right now. Like I'm being resurrected in your consciousness, but I'll fade because there's so many other things to pay attention to. But what causes somebody to be so useful to other people that people want to keep on going back and memorize their words, right? And if you look at different art forms, which would be technology, there's certain skills that you can use or learn or acquire or just have that would make you more easily to get into that addictive or into that meaningful spot in somebody's brain where they want to perpetually interact with you, even though you are disembodied, right? In order for us to pay attention to somebody who's disembodied, that person has to overcome that barrier, right? Either that or we just have to be so absorbed by just paying attention to people who aren't in the room via TV and other media streams that the barrier is not that high for entry into paying attention. But if anybody wants to pay attention to you for a sustained amount of time, you have to offer them some product. So there's skills, but there's something beyond skills. There's that thing called knowledge. There's the way in which Nietzsche could write a beautiful sentence, and then there's the content of every one of those sentences, like how he was interacting or how he causes an interaction in your brain. Right, there's that way, and then there's, like, just conveying knowledge in a beautiful way, or having some sort of deep insight, and then there's the technology of the writing and all this technology, and all the servers that are pointing through us that would cause it to perpetuate through time. But if you really want to perpetuate through, as the original question asked, 10,000 years, if you want to do that, then you have to be something that would initiate a certain sort of change or interaction with the imaginations of people 10,000 years in the future. And you don't know what people are going to be obsessed with 10,000 years from now. You don't even know if people are going to, well, be people anymore, or if there will be people anymore, but you don't know what they're going to be concerned with. But you can look back at history and say, well, these are the things that survived so long, right? Which would be myth. Some of the oldest things that we have would be story from human culture. The memes that survived through the darkness of 10,000 years were probably rudimentary images that we still have with us and are completely aware of how old these things are, but they're still there with us. And somebody at some point in time crafted that image or made that connection that we still use to this day. I think one of the oldest words in, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European, which all of the European languages are based on, one of the oldest words, existent words that has gone through minimal modification, apparently is fart. Fart made it this far. Like, fart, I think it's the word fart, came through us, thousands and thousands of years. It's just been surfing around, just there, right with us, right here, right now. I mean, that's basically something that's relevant throughout the ages. Like, people are going to be farting 10,000 years from now. So if you stake, a lot of people do that. Like the Seth MacFarlanes of the world, they staple their contribution to something very rudimentary. Like, you go boobs, you go farts, you go something like that. But the problem with that is that everybody's got boobs. So you have to compete with everybody else's boobs. You have to compete with everybody else's farts. Because that's the easiest thing to make. So it's most likely. I mean, the pool is much greater of competition if you're trying to be like the man who made the fart joke that lasted 10,000 years. I mean, it's possible you could do it, but there's a lot of people that could do it. That's a big U out there because it's such a common experience. Raymond Gordon says, great writers achieve immortality because they resonate with what it means to be human. Yeah. That's why I think that's my gambit. I mean, I think that you could say that there are scientists, there are people whose contribution to basic rudimentary ways of thinking have been around for a long time. You can look at all mathematicians have perpetuated, or math itself is perpetuated for a very long time. That's a very, very old construct. It's a very old set of memes, because it's eminently useful, because it keeps on proving to be true, let's say. I'm trying to figure out my relationship with that word, true. I've been stumbling into it with interviews here and there, and I believe in it, but as a word, I'm still like, there's something fishy about even the concept of truth. Like, even the concept of truth attracts falsehood. Like, I think you should even be skeptical of the concept of truth. Like, there's something fishy about that. Or it's very easy to push into different directions. So, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that human beings make it really grubby. We just get our little fingerprints on everything, And insofar as we name something, that's a way of putting your fingerprints on it. Anyways, so great writers achieve immortality because they resonate with what it means to be human. Like anything else that perpetuates resonates with something that's perpetual, right? If you want to be perpetual, marry yourself to something perpetual. UPS man just brought my bitters. Oh, this is a hot take if I ever saw one. Scarlett says true has been bastardized by science. How do you bastardize truth? How do you bastardize truth? What? How do you bastardize truth? Okay, so if you go up, like, what's greater than truth? So if you go up to experience, right? Okay, you go up to experience and you mate with experience. You kind of like get up there, and you rub your eyes against it, like you have a big insight, right? And then out pops truth 9 months later. Under what circumstances would truth be legitimate or illegitimate, right? Did you marry reality in the sight of God and your fellow man? Was it presided over by a holy officer of whatever brand of truth church is in your local area? Or did you do it in the secret, hidden spot of the night? And that is just a bastardized truth. It's running around, pillaging neighborhood slopes where little gold mines play with the leprechaun folk. Under what circumstances would a truth be bastardized? Under what circumstance would it be legitimate? That's my question. Ooh, this is okay. We're getting really far out here. So I'm going to read the commenter Rai P, who's been around for quite a while. If we want to go back to 10,000 years of Benjamin on YouTube, Rai P has been there for a significant portion of that historical epoch. And he writes into the chat box, truth and math don't really mix. Math has proven that some statements can never be proven, true nor false, by math. See Gödel's incompleteness theorems. You know what? Was it Gödel's incompleteness theorem? So there was this guy, Albert North Whitehead, and he was working with, I believe it was Russell. I want to say Russell. I'm sorry if it's wrong. I don't think it was Wittgenstein, so I think it's Russell. Anyway, so this guy in like 1910 or 1905 or 1920, anyway, these two dudes, Anglo dudes, big into logic, they decide to create like the ultimate like book of math, like where it's all proven. They decide to do that. And it takes them something like 40 pages into this novel before they definitively prove that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Or maybe it's just 1 plus 1 equals 2. They had to do all this work just to get to that point, right? And then Gödel comes along. This is the story that I heard. Gödel comes along and says, "You guys are working on this thing. It's never going to work because of this and that and this other thing." There's like some hole. No matter what system that we use, there's always a hole in the system. There's always a loophole, and I don't want to bastardize that entire frame of that insight because I don't fully understand it, right? But intuitively, it's fun and it kind of feels right that no matter what system of belief I erect, no matter how far it works, there's going to be instances that I will not be able to make sense of within my system. I will have to go outside of my system. There's a portal, there's a blind spot, there's something there. I'm being poetic about it. I'm going to get off because I'm just sounding like a ninny. I know it. I really know it. There's a loophole in everything, though. Even math has a God spot. Yeah. Ripe is bringing me back down to earth. He says, this is not a religious position or poetic one. I wasn't using religious thing. I wasn't saying like there was a portal to God. I said that. Okay, technically I said that, but it was a joke. Okay, but he says this is not a religious position or anything, just a limit of logic. I don't know. It just feels like any sort of system of belief that you have, there's something that you have to bring into it. Like there's always a gap in there. I don't know. So what's up next, guys? It is about time to get to my next spot of the day. I have to work on an interview that I should post. I was going to post it today, but now I've made content, so I have to post content now. But I gotta edit down an interview that I'll post probably tomorrow, and then I have Andrew Doyle on again tomorrow, who is the author behind Titania, Titania, Titania McGrath on Twitter. I don't know if you guys know that person or that other person. Titania, Titania, such a lame one. Titania, like the metal, right? Like an element. Anyways, I'm making fun of British people who make fun of me. This is this whole thing. all these centrists and me. We just don't get along. Anyways, I love them though because they have so much knowledge and astuteness, such as Andrew Doyle. So he's coming on the show. We're going to speak. Maybe he'll wear a hat. Maybe we'll tell jokes to one another. I don't know. You never know what you're going to get. Like today's interview, totally didn't expect that. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. One of my friends said, "Oh, that's crazy that you have such a low vetting process. You just I'm like, oh, I found that guy interesting. I'm gonna go talk to them." And then they appear on my show, and maybe I just do an interview with them. I'm like, oh, whoa, I don't know if I should put that one out into the world or not. You know, like other people's brains. Like it's one thing for me to put my brain on the internet. It's another for me to go out and hunting for other people's brains to put on the internet. I enjoy doing that. I have a certain audience that enjoys that to happen, but that's what we're doing. We're little like brain feasters out here. We're just eviscerating. No, we're not even doing anything. We're just letting them eviscerate themselves and all their guts spill out. And we're like, ooh, look at the guts. Whoa, did you see that? Ah, twitching gallbladder or a blog bladder, whatever, you know. It's one thing for me to do that to you and you to tune in or you to tune out or whatever usefulness you find for me and my relationship of your voice, my voice to your ears. But it's another thing for me to have other people's voices on. And you never know what you're going to get, right? You just initiate this process of people opening up onto like some sort of spatial back and forth conversation, and they're laying themselves out upon your attention. And sometimes that's rewarding, and sometimes it's unexpected. That's all I'm saying. It's a wonderful process. Human beings love to talk. We love to talk, you know? It's just weird. Like that's just something like I've spent a lot of time alone. I've spent a lot of time quiet, you know, like just listening to my own voices in my own head, right? Like just listening to all the different talking that I do, you know, it's like you go out of like a solitude. This is one thing I wanted to bring somebody on to talk about solitude because I think there might be a lot of people who are dealing with solitude or a steep decrease in their socialization, and that's very novel for them because they haven't experienced that necessarily. There might be a lot of those people. They might be escaping into the internet to get away from that non-voice or their own voice in their own room now. So I wanted to explore that with somebody because I've spent a lot of time alone. When you spend a lot of time alone, you go back into the world of people, you go back into the world of society, there's a lot of things about human beings that are really strange. When you take a break from them, you know, you go back, there's a lot of weird, strange things. But that being said, when you go away from them and you've never been away from them before, there's this whole other world that opens up for you. And it might be helpful. There might be some people out there that would like to hear somebody talk about that. I think that that would be a really interesting, useful thing to explore. How to be alone, how to be considerate, how to be internal, how to start to decorate your interior with all the different ideas that you didn't even know you had, and how do you initiate the process of, just being in your own head, being in your own room, being alone. Everybody's in their cave right now. We're all on some sort of sabbatical in a way. Not all of us. Thank you, UPS man. Thank you, grocers. Thank you, nurses. Thank you, doctors. Thank you for all the government officials. If you're doing a bad job, you're doing a good job, you're doing a job. Thank you for doing that. I know that for the most part, well, I don't know that. I want to extend the hope that everybody who's out there helping us right now and engaged in the world is I just want to give you my support. I want to give you my thanks. A lot of things in my life rely on other people. Actually, most of my life relies on other people, even though I'm so, I afford my life of solitude based on the hard work and the experience and the knowledge of hundreds of millions of other people. It's always been the case. So I wanted to give a shout out to those people. I always keep them in my thoughts and prayers, and donations, money, whatever I can do. What I should do is a little bit of research, figure out like a charity if people do want to donate to something. Maybe we could do a little fund run. Maybe I can get some guests on from other YouTube channels and just do a fund run and buy masks for people or something like that. Because there's a lot of people in a lot of need. That would be a good service to run my mouth off with. In other words, Bri I'm not sure why it's so troubling to you, though. Sufficiently complex self-reference can break down a formal system. Nothing earth-shattering here. No, dude. Okay, I'm going to go off a little bit. Sufficiently complex self-reference can break down a formal system. That's why That's why I had to write this thing 6 times, like 6 times, because it kept on becoming so self-referential. Sorry, I put a syllable in there that didn't belong. It constantly decided to become so self-referential that the system would break down. Like the stories talking to other stories. What I'm trying to do is create a concert out of stories, right? Where you have the mythologies like the woodwinds, and you have like the science fiction is like the symbols, and like all these different like forms or genres or worlds or types of storytelling are all these different parts of a symphony. And I'm getting all those stories to work together. But I had to figure out how to make a central place where they would all converge. And so I had to construct a conductor. I had to construct a conductor that existed, or a story that existed between all the other stories, that is then performing with all those other different stories, one story together. And that process of, I didn't even know what I was doing. I had to like slowly figure out what I was doing because it kept on breaking down into self-reference. That's what I'm talking about. So that Gödel's incompleteness theorem works on logic. I've been experimenting with that on a completely other thing, on the level of narrative. Like there's actually a lot of weird math that I'm putting in here, but it's not in and of itself math. It's a system of symbols. It's a system of stories. It's a system of characters. But anyway, so I very resonate with that incompleteness theorem because it's about becoming self-referential, and I've had a huge problem with that throughout all of my creative life. Like it's really hard to escape myself and my awareness of myself for a long time. Like I think I eventually figured out how to pay attention to something other than myself, but it took way too long. But because that self-referential aspect that I wanted to put into literature kept on destroying literature. It's like it's very, very, very postmodern. This is why there's a big relationship between self-referential fiction, the failures of self-referential fiction, or how a self-referential fiction ends up corrupting the story. There's something very similar between the way that self-reference within fiction destroys fiction, with the way in which critical theory goes into any given system, goes into any different club, and starts to poison it with obsessions over self, obsessions over identity, and begins to break down the system. It becomes extremely self-referent and completely devalues every other mode of interaction other than the identity. Or the problematization. Like there's something very, very virulent about postmodernism, whether it's artistic postmodernism or the current version that Lindsay, Pluckrose, Bogosian, etc. critique. Just in a behavioral way, the way it behaves. It has the same kind of output of just destroying these different systems or destroying connections between individuals because it starts to self-reference itself. The culture becomes poisoned by a way of referring to individuals within that culture that strain and break down the glue that holds that culture together. Ergo, the system becomes so self-referential that it breaks down. Incompleteness theorem as a metaphor. I'm not saying that's a spiritual thing. I'm saying that the metaphor, as a metaphor, it applies into domains that are not not necessarily logical at all. That's an argument. I don't have anything to back that up other than that it makes sense to me. And I was able to say it. So not only does it make sense to me, but I was able to put that out, and I will have to go back and listen to this to actually see if I actually did make sense, because I'm not really aware, being non-self-referential, in order not to break down just how much sense I'm making. That's why an audience is very important to have or imagine in front of you, because you can project that they're paying attention, or you get to see that they're paying attention to you. And that live audience is great if you can get over that really deep, disparate flush of adrenaline that might affect you if you suffer, as I do, of early onset performance anxiety. Walter White says, at Gray Seaman, I'd shock you. I enter things better when high for some reason. Okay, so they are doing drugs in the comet field, and I will not reference that. Joe Dirt, hey, I'm sorry, Jose Dirt. Thank you for the super chat. $5 US. Your thoughts on the new Hero Safe Space and Snowflake? Oh, God. I don't have that picture. So what Marvel did was... I do have one thought. I'm going to have to find the freaking picture. What Marvel did was they made characters... apparently, this is not a parody. Called Safe Space Snowflake. snowflake marvel. I'm going to have to get you guys this picture because I only have one thought of this. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to show you some. So they came up with this thing, and they're supposed to be non-binary. So they're both they, them, of course, which is really precious and very sacred. If I press this, oh no. All right, I have to upload a picture really quick. So they're they, thems, and they're very special. And crap, this is bad. How do I do? Oh, I see. There we go. Add a picture. Open. Okay, there we go. So there's a girl and a boy, and my only substantial critique of these characters is that here. Can you see me? Where am I? Crap. Okay. Is that she's got a bigger bulge than he does. That's my only substantial critique of these characters. So they're both non-binary, and this is Snowflake, and she has the power of safe spaces. It's really interesting. Like one of them has the power of safe spaces. No. Anyways, they have these ridiculous powers, and the only thing that I can say is that the girl's bulge is actually more substantial than the boy's bulge, probably because of the way that they are ingesting things into their bodies that they probably shouldn't. But, because they live in a very special land of infinite possibility called the imagination, they don't have to worry about the consequences, but it's very evident with the skin tight suits on what those consequences are. So Jose Dirte, Jose Dirt, Jose Dirt, that's my thoughts on that. Somebody thinks I'm a jock. This is really weird. We are totally in a weird place now where this guy, Ryad, thinks I'm a jock. That's the first time anybody's ever thought that about me. Maybe you're being sarcastic. I see the lull there. Or maybe I'm just getting into the middle of the conversation that I have no business in being in because it's just on the side of my video while I do my own thing. They're doing theirs. Okay. So this very silly account says, an artist actively trying to mock SJW comic book creators could not have come up with a more ridiculous group of superheroes. We could read the article. I think all the most important commentators on YouTube, I should probably just get back into commentating. You can't do both. I realized I cannot be a commenter and a interviewer. I actually, in order for my brand and my brain to be consistent, which I'm not really into, but as I progress with what I do, I have to actually narrow my focus. And being a commenter would possibly interrupt the connections that I can make being an interviewer, right? So I'm just not in the commentating space. I'm not in the space of having a strong opinion, and it's not a good place to be because YouTube drives. YouTube interaction is driven by opinion. So me not being opinionated anymore is not good for business. So I actually have to be opinionated. So I'm reconfiguring and reformulating how I'm going to do that while still maintaining the deep connection and sympathy and openness and attentiveness to other people's viewpoints in such a way that I navigate them into deeper ways of communicating what they're actually thinking about any given issue in order to maintain that depth of listening and to have some sort of rambunctious, opinionated, musky sort of, this is what I think about that, which is what is actually really good if you want to be good on YouTube, is it's all about. I'm torn, guys. I'm in some sort of pitted battle. Not really, but there's a drag. There's a tension there that's been difficult to navigate since I moved into here. Into this house. I've been thinking about that, watching the reactions to my opinion watching my opinion start to have interactions that are not necessarily what I want to deal with. And also watching the ability of just producing the quality. I'm sorry to say this, but the quality of my interviews, I think, is really, it's golden stuff. I really do think that, a high percentage of my interviews are actually really important stuff, but not immediate. Like they're important as a historical record. They're good for people that find them that are into it, but they're supposed to be around for a long time so people can find them. They're documents, right? I'm really proud of that. That's all I'm saying. But they don't get that big attention. They're a big time sink for a lot of people. You have to very slowly build that audience, right? It's easy to build an audience by championing a set of opinions that other people can agree with or disagree with in an entertaining way, because agreement and disagreement are the way that people bind together, right? Ultimately, if I want to become immortal on the internet, I need to have an opinion. But there's two forms of immortality, right? There's longevity and there's immediacy. If I want immediacy, if I want the big numbers, if I want the interaction right now, I need to be involved in any given current conversation. Therefore, I need to be able to create a personhood or a character that can go into every given hot topic and have a little discourse on that. And while I experimented with that for a couple of years, my beginning YouTube, I would rather go to a deeper level, rather being somebody that has an opinion, to be somebody who goes to people who have been thinking about this for a really long time and platform the people who are knowledgeable about that, right? Which is still me interacting with the hot topic, but because it's on a deeper level, we're talking about like just most people are paying attention to the tip of the iceberg. I want to interact with something like probably 10 meters below the surface, at least, maybe a little deeper. But, even I like start to get a little bit of the bends by going too deep into these various different topics and then jumping over to another topic, like it's taken me, I've been doing the trans investigations for like a year and a half. Like I took a long time to do that. It's still relevant stuff. But, you know, deep and wide, deep and wide. Mal Brained of beautiful European monies. Thank you for the super chat. Hi Ben, you're a literature of ideas, man. Which book or author informed your own style most of all? Keep up the good work. You know what? I really want to plug two authors. I will plug two authors. These are out of the way authors that probably most of you haven't heard of. One is Robert Olmsted. Olmstead. Robert Olmsted. I will write them down and put them onto the screen. Robert Olmsted and shoot. So this guy, he writes Faulkner-esque fictions. And he wrote this one book, Trail of Heart's Blood, Wherever I Go. And it's similar to Murakami. Murakami's really excellent, but Murakami is always living in a Murakami world. Robert Olmsted is always living in an Olmsted world. Every one of his books are kind of very the same. He's very poetic. He's very patient. Very helpful for me to see how I could be poetic and present on the page. How to create a scene where I could play around with language, but also give people the sense of being in a certain room. That guy, wonderful, wonderful books. And then there's Alistair Gray. I'm probably spelling his name wrong, but it's Alistair Gray. I'm gonna have to go look for it. No, I know. I have it right here. Yeah. I'm gonna type it down one more time. Alistair Gray. And here we go. Alastair Gray. He's Scottish. He's insane. This guy is totally insane. He illustrates every one of his books. The best book, probably the best novel I've ever read. Oh God, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. Is Janine 1982. Janine 1982. Absolutely just one of the best books ever written. Hands down. It's not for everybody. It's actually just for men who have been really hurt. Like a man who's gone through a very serious breakup. Like it's about the amount of pain that a man feels from a betrayal by a woman. And it's not a pretty thing. But like as you go through it and he's working through all that anger, and all that hatred that he's projecting onto the ideal of the woman. He's going through this relationship with femaleness that is so, it starts out very erotic and very sadistic, and as it goes through, it just becomes he just totally breaks down, and like just all of that hatred, just you can see it as just pain, and that pain is based on love. It's absolutely terribly, terribly personal book. That's not for everybody at all. It's probably for men in their 30s that have gone through a very serious breakup. But it's the best book for a man in his 30s that has gone through a very serious breakup, a very deep gash in his heart. Oh man, Janine, 1982. I will. 1982, Janine. 1982, Janine. Thanks for that. Anyways, I'm not at all a misogynist. I hope that I'm not. I um, really try to be very respectful and a very good brother to women. This book is incredibly misogynistic, though. It's incredibly misogynistic. But if you hold through, like, you can see how that misogyny is actually based on something else. Anyways, so I'll give you those two books, or the author Robert Olmsted and Alistair Gray, and they're on the screen right now. Anyways, I think that's about it for me, guys. Thanks for. Oh, geez. Wait, Sign says that there's a copy of Janine 1982 for $900 on Amazon. He illustrated it, so it's probably a first edition. I would think that maybe it's not in print anymore. It would books go out of print all the time, out of print all the time. But he also wrote a book called Lanark that I couldn't get through. I couldn't get into because Janine 1982. I've read his shorter fictions. He's a really good author. Really weird guy. But I just wanted to give you guys two books that are kind of are two authors to look into that you might have heard of before. Scarlett at Benjamin A. Boyce. For your information, most women want a daddy, not a brother. And you know why I'd rather be a brother than a daddy? There's a lot less responsibility being a brother than there is being a daddy, even if there's not as much market. I don't need I don't need to be what women want. Like that's not efficient for my life or theirs. I'd rather just be somebody that they can, be a brother with. Like that's all I'm signing up for. That's all I'm signing up for. Just knowing my own limitations. Prism asks, is the book saying something like all women are bad, or is it portraying specific bad women? No, it's a man fantasizing about women, right? It's a man's relationship to women. It's not saying a statement about women. It's showing him his relationship to women. That's the thing. That's the thing that people don't really understand. It's like literature is not about making a point. It's about showing somebody interacting with something. Like it's showing a relationship, right? So it's not about like this book is saying that all women are bad or all women are good. Like any book that's doing that is not a book. It's not literature. By making a point like that, you're not participating in literature. You're participating in propaganda, some sort of morality play. Which is there's a place for that. There's a place for that. But the book itself is not saying anything about women. It's saying something about a man who's just done for. This guy's just done with life, just totally done with life. And what brought him into life and what caused him to be engaged with life happened to be women. So his relationship to his own life goes through his fantasies about women. You can really feel that. You can really feel the content. When you get to that level of content, it's like it's not what you believe. Like when I go and I talk to people about their experience, I don't want to know what they believe. I want to know why they believe what they believe. I want to know how their beliefs, their conceptions of the world, their viewpoint, and their opinions were formed by their real life experience. And that's what I want to lay out, and that's the juice, that's the nugget, and that's something that people aren't necessarily attuned for in this world of opinion, unless the person's being entertaining while they're doing that. People aren't necessarily looking for that because I think we've lost our literature along the way, but I think that there's plenty and plenty and plenty of people who are hungry for that and are ready for that, such as everybody here and thousands of millions of people, like the popular culture doesn't really care about that because it doesn't drive a lot of eyeballs, right? But people who are discreet with their eyeball sending and receiving want something that's a little bit more substantial. And that's the stuff that I want to get to in the interviews, not just like, what is your identity? And like, no, like, who are you as a person in this identity? And then you watch all these identity plays. So you talk about identity to get to something beyond the identity, right? I was thinking, I'm going to leave you guys with this. I'm reading this book by Abigail Schreier. It's called Irreversible Damage. It will be released on June 30th of this year. And it's about rapid onset gender dysphoric females. It's specifically about the transgender phenomenon. And it goes into layer after layer after layer of all these different things that are acting in concert to cause like a 1,500% uptick in the number of women that are like seeking gender therapy or pursuing sex hormones or pursuing surgeries. It just goes into that. But she's talking about and there's different layers of this, and I've been trying to show that in the program. Like there's transsexuals who are dedicated to it because they've really thought deeply about how they are interacting with the world, and they need to change that. And then there's this other set of people who are caught up into it because it's such a big deal. And she goes into this YouTube culture about that, like the medical industry, the schools, the gender ideology, all these different things acting in concert that are really sweeping young people up into this fixation with this thing called gender. And I was just thinking about the way in which gender is being treated in certain schools or certain programs, that your gender identity is like, it's the evolution of the participation prize. Your gender identity doesn't actually accomplish anything in the world, but if you can claim one and get accolades for that, it's like it's a very special star, right? But it's still just a star. It's not really actually tied to any actual thing that you've done, right? And that's what it's that trick of identity. It's like an evolution of the self-esteem movement. Like you're really really special. You're really really special. And all that heaps of praise eventually had to evolve into something with a little bit more texture, a little bit more novelty. And in certain respects, certain aspects of gender ideology and the ways that it is interacting with young teen people specifically is like a participation trophy for performing some sort of characteristics that are completely secondary. One, to what you actually do in the world, and two, who you actually are. I don't think any identity actually contains you. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. I can't believe people think that an identity can contain them or an identity can define them. I thought we were over that. I thought we were over that. As a Gen Xer, I thought we were overthinking that. Like I thought that was done, but like it rears its head again and again and again. And I think it's this transposition of the individual onto the tribal, right? This identity gives you access, gives you acceptance, gives you an ability to be a part of a tribe, and we're hungry for that. We're hungry for that. But for some reason, the tribe's not actually tied to anything actually substantial. So the identity gives you a pass into a bunch of verbiage and a bunch of attention with no real output. And arguably, like, how long is that going to sustain you? Like, how long can your identity group sustain you? Don't you want family? Don't you want interpersonal connections? And once you start connecting with people on a human level, like all that identity, it really evaporates really, really quickly. When we're all a bunch of strangers on the internet, yeah, sure, identity means something, but person to person, human to human, actuality to actuality, persisting together through time is not going to be sustained by these little pins that we've tailed our donkeys with. Anyways, I should set up more interviews for next week. I'm sorry, that Prism, you were on there the whole time. I strayed away from the point. Scarlett says, Benjamin A. Boyce, keep doing those vids on the detransitioner girls. Trenders are a big problem facing teen women. It's partly because they don't want to be identified with hypersexualized women in porn. Yeah, there's a lot of levels to it. You can't. I proposed, I thought it was risky to propose that certain forms of feminism gave rise to this perception that young women might have that a woman will always be, subservient to man. So it's better to become a man than it is to be a woman. for a variety of reasons, but like there's this image of women as victims through their lives that might cause certain background radiation to a young girl wanting to avoid becoming a woman. There's that narrative I don't think is necessarily good for women to internalize. Young women shouldn't internalize that they're victims. Nobody should. But that's one level. Pornography and the way that pornography's affected this generation absolutely has been informing young women's visions of themselves and young men's visions of themselves. Absolutely. That is a really kind of dark and murky point to try to see clearly. But you can't underestimate the power that the internet and that part of the internet has had over the identities or the desires or the paths that young people are taking towards entering into a relationship with the world that doesn't abuse them or use them or degrade them, but actually respects them and not necessarily approves them, but gives them positive feedback when they put good work into it, right? Your work is valued. Don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. If you're victimized, that's one thing, but don't allow any form of victimization to get in the way of you doing something with your life, right? And maybe saving other people from being victims is, technically a way of doing something with your life. But, if that's what you do, if you're helping other people, then I don't care. But don't let your victimhood block you from actually doing something that can actually be yours. They can see outside of you. And that can give you feedback about how you can be better or where you failed. You know. Anyways, I should probably get off. You guys are great. Cami Mon says, I live that being human means identity fades into unimportant. Yes. I love that being human means identity fades into something unimportant. All those containers just dissolve. But those containers are there for a reason. The labels are there for a reason. They probably can say that they're misappropriated, but there's reasons why these identity things exist. They're barriers between us and the world, right? They're barriers between us and strangers. They're barriers, right? They tie us together, but they also give us a sense of not just belonging but vulnerability. We allow, and once we start to interact with each other as selves, those layers after layers after layers come off, right? And then you're just interacting with a whole bunch of layers, because it's not like we're a bunch of shallownesses. Human beings are a bunch of shallownesses just stacked upon each other, and every once in a while they coagulate or they harmonize into something profound. But for the most part, we're just very lowly creatures, all of us. You're just like petty and selfish and silly and ridiculous, but in aggregate, when you put all those different qualities together, you get something pretty cool, like a bouncy house, made out of language and feelings and experiences and memories and hopes and dreams and so on and so forth. Little mansions we are, just populating this world. And now we're all inside of our apartments. But I just want to say, while you're in this confined space, you contain multitudes. Everyone contains multitudes. And there might be some attics or back rooms to clear out a little bit and inspect that have been neglected or never even found before, that might have a few spiders that if you just brush aside will reveal something amazing about yourself that you never knew was in you. But you have to go exploring. And for that, you need to disengage with that which is outside of you. And with that, I will let you guys alone to your own thoughts, and I'll go find mine. You're great. You're excellent. Thanks for joining me in this afternoon. Good